So let's talk about inflation. It's everywhere right now. On the news, they're talking about inflation. In the newspaper, they're saying, how do we hedge against inflation? People are asking, how do you protect against inflation? And we're getting calls constantly about it because inflation is kind of one of those things we all hear what the name is, but we're not quite sure what it is. And we're not quite sure why it's so scary and why we should know about it. So very plainly, inflation is your dollar against the cost of goods. Cost of goods grow every single year at a certain inflation rate, and your dollar needs to grow with that to keep up with buying power. So let's take an example. Let's say you have a cup of coffee that costs $2. You're buying it at the gas station. You're definitely not going to one of the big coffee places to get it. But let's say you're getting a $2 cup of coffee. And in 10 years, if the inflation rate every year is 3%, that cup of coffee is $2.69. And if your dollar grew at the rate of inflation of 3%, your $2 would have grown with that and gone to $2.69. So it has the same buying power. In 30 years, that same cup of coffee that started at $2 today is $4.85. So that's what inflation does. The cost of goods grow, and your dollar needs to grow with that to have the same buying power. So 3%, okay, that's pretty historical rates. But let's look at if we just increase inflation a little bit to maybe 5%. So you have a $2 cup of coffee, and in 30 years, instead of $4.85, it's now $8.64 because our inflation rate was 5%. That is a huge difference. That is a huge gain of cost over the 30 years. And so your dollar needed to keep up with that, and it needed to grow 5% every single year to have the same buying power. And so that's what's so scary about having a high inflation rate, because realistically, your money needs to grow with inflation every year, because the biggest risk you have in your retirement plan is not having your money grow with inflation. But when inflation is at 7 or 12%, now you're having to take on risks that maybe you weren't comfortable with to keep up with buying power. So that can be very scary. And there's lots of ways to balance out your portfolio so that you can still get that safety, but also not take on the risk of not having your dollar grow with the cost of goods or with inflation. And so there's lots of different techniques you can do. There's many different strategies out there. It's really about sitting down with your professional. And if you don't have one, please give us a call. We'd be happy to go through this with you and putting together a strategy, because every year inflation is going to be different. We've been in a very low inflation environment recently, and it might go up. Probably will. But if you don't have a plan for it, that's when it can really hurt you. Your plan needs to be in place, and it needs to be flexible because things change constantly. Taxes change, inflation rates will change, the market's going to change. We're going through an extremely volatile market right now, and that was after a period where we've gone up in the market so dramatically since last year. So there's a lot of moving parts in your plan, and inflation is only one of them, but it can be the biggest risk. So give us a call. We're happy to discuss it and see how it's affecting your plan.